Hello to the world. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome, welcome. Give a big shout out, everybody. There you go. You see, what an enthusiastic crowd we have here in Long Beach, California for another episode of Torah Study with Rabbi P. So last week we talked about, that crazy story about the golden calf. And, we tried to explain it from a number of different angles. Also, of course, we mentioned about Maimonides, our great Ashkenazic. I know, I just do it I just love their reaction. That the Sephardic corner that we have over here now. You see? I just love the reaction. So our faith, what? I wouldn't doubt it. And his brother-in-law. I'm telling you. You see? So he had an opinion. It was interesting that Maimonides had an opinion about this. Usually he's very quiet, doesn't have much of an opinion, Maimonides. So he actually wrote something about this, and we talked about the golden calf. But today we're going to talk about the aftermath of the golden calf. Once already Moses came down, and he took the calf, and he grinded it down, and he made people drink with the water. We know the whole thing. And then afterwards, God says to him, hey, you know what, look, I think it may be a good idea, since the people, we talked about last week, the idea that people worship, physical things. I mean, they needed something. So maybe, it would be probably a good idea if we build our own house. Meaning that, every king has a palace, and every palace has beautiful rooms and beautiful articles in there. So why don't we do that? At least the people, when they worship, they'll worship for me. And then he goes through and he gives them all of the details of how he wants this campaign to work. You go out there, you start raising money, you start getting gold and silver and copper and all of these things, and goat hairs and red wool and this kind of wool and all different kinds of onyx stones and acacia wood. He gives them the whole thing, and then he tells them exactly what he wants in this sanctuary and how it's going to look and how it's going to be and who's going to serve in there and when people are going to be allowed to come in there. All of the rules, and Moses listens to him, and he says, don't worry, I don't want you to do it. I'm going to I'm going to get you some help. Because Moses, how is he going to be able to do all of this, make all of these things? He says, don't worry, I got two people that are brilliant, and they're knowledgeable in architecture, in building, and in stone cutting, and all the necessary things. And not only them, those two, which is going to be Betzal and that he's going to attach, what we mentioned last week, Betzal and Aliyov. These two guys are going to run the show, and with them you're going to get a bunch of craftsmen and ladies that know how to weave and how to sew and all. So you don't have to worry. It's not, but you will be the project manager. You're going to be the one that's going to make sure that everything gets done accordingly, perfectly, the way I want it to happen. And if I say I want the ark to be 1.5 cubits by 2.5 cubits, it's not an estimation. I mean, it's something that I want. That's what I want. I want 1.5 cubits. So I want you to measure out exactly 1.5 cubits. And, we know with engineers, you have to be very precise, right, to the inch. And that's what I want. And I want 3 layers of coverings on top, and I want the walls in a specific way. And all right, fine, okay. So Moses gets all the rules, and he comes down. Now, you have to remember that this is after a process of 120 days since the giving of the Torah. Okay? So 120 days. How do we know that? There's 3 periods of 40 days. Meaning, on the 6th of Sivan, the Jewish people received the 10 commandments. God said, I am your God, etc., etc. Moses then goes up for 40 days. And the people miscalculate, like we talked about last week. So that's the first period of 40. Okay? While he's up there, the people build a golden calf. God expels him from heaven. He comes down, he does what he has to do with the golden calf, and then he tells the people, I'm going to go back there and I'm going to pray for forgiveness. Okay? I'm going to pray for God to forgive you. So this is from the 17th day of Tammuz till the first day of Elul. Those are another 40-day period where he asks for forgiveness. Finally, God relents. He says, Salachti kidvarecha, I'm going to forgive them according to your asking. And now I want you to come back, and I'm going to give it to you again, the 10 commandments, my original 10 commandments, but this time you bring the stone. The first one, I brought the stone. Now you're going to bring the stone. You're going to bring the stone, and I'll write the 10 commandments. So that took another 40 days. So there's 40 first days when he was initially in heaven, 40 days of pleading, God, and then another 40 days, then he goes back up and gets to do it all over again, and he comes down on Yom Kippur. So the 120th day is Yom Kippur. So he comes down, and that's why we celebrate Yom Kippur as a day of forgiveness. Because Moses comes down and the good news that God has forgiven you, etc. The day after Yom Kippur, that means the day after the Jews give a sigh of relief, like they escaped, by the skin of their teeth. Moses said, we have a project. We have a project. And this is the project, and this is where we're going to pick it up right now. So this is already after 120 days since the giving of the Torah. Moses is coming now, and Vayakel Moshe, the first, if you go to page 517, Moses assembles the entire congregation of Israel, and he's going to give them the instructions of what he wants built. Okay, so we're all clear about the timeline, because it's going to be in the test, okay? If you want to pass this class, it's going to be in the test, the timeline, 120 days, and A, B, C, D, one follows the other. So right now, it's the day after Yom Kippur. Moses gathers the entire people, and they're waiting for this big announcement, what's going to happen. So what does he say to them? He says, these are the things that Hashem commanded to do them. This is what God wants you to do. Page 517, if you're going in the Chumash, 517. Okay? On 6 days, work may be done, but the 7th day shall be holy for you. A day of complete rest for Hashem. Whoever does work on Shabbat shall be put to death. You shall not kindle fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. So this is the big pronouncement. That, 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day you got to rest. You have to rest. Okay? And just so you should understand, no kindling of fire on the Sabbath day. Okay? We'll have to ask a question about this. Moses said to the entire assembly of Jews of Israel, saying, this is the word that Hashem commanded, saying, take for yourself a portion for Hashem. I mean, now he's into the fundraising bit. Make sure, take for yourself a portion. Whoever's hearts motivate him shall bring it as a gift. Gold, silver, copper, turquoise, purple, scarlet wool, linen, goat hair, red-dyed ram skins, tachash skins, acacia wood, oil, spices, the onyx stones, and that's what. Okay, and then he goes in the rest of the chapter, talks about how we're going to build all of these things, who's going to build them. Okay, so the first thing that commentators ask about this portion is why it mentioned Shabbos. We know that already. It's not the first time that God had mentioned Shabbos. First of all, he'd mentioned the sanctity of Sabbath way back in the 10 Commandments. He told us to keep Sabbath. And even then afterwards, when the man came down, he again reiterated the laws of Sabbath. 6 days you go out there and you gather the man, but on the 7th day, what do? Rest. You rest. So he already told them about the holiday of Sabbath. And here you think that, what's the excitement? What is the exciting news that Moses is here going to reveal to the Jews? That we are going to build a sanctuary. So you would say, the first thing that Moses would say, guys, I'm telling you, we have a great news. Great news I have for everybody. You know what? We are going to have our own little temple. The first temple ever built in the history of the world for the Jewish people. We're about to embark on this mission. And you're going to help me. How? By donating. Okay? So put your hand in your pockets and get out those checkbook and start writing. Okay? I don't want to hear your paralysis. Okay? I know you have. Everybody got money from Egypt. Okay? So you're going to cough it up, baby. That would be and then, afterwards he tells them all of the rules. Then secondary says, by the way, okay, I just want to, so why the Sabbath? Okay. That's a good question that we're going to unpack now. Because in general, the world, and Shmuel could talk to this because he's the physicist, space and time, right? We have space and time, which we always thought that they were constants, but we find out not so much, it's curved and it goes around. Go ask that guy with the funny white hair, whatever the guy's name was, what's his name over there? Einstein, something like that, you can go ask him exactly what this is all about, this. But in general, there are two ideas that run this world: space and time. Those are two things. Now, generally, generally we are focused as human beings to gather as much space as possible. The more space, the more power. And you see this over history, over and over and over again. One kingdom fighting another kingdom, fighting another kingdom. For what? For space. We want space. We have land. The more land you have, the more you are strong. The more the more agriculture you can grow. The more produce you can have. So expansion of space. And that's not only true about nations versus nations. It's also true about human beings. Space represents things. So you know what we have is one of the key elements that we have is we gotta have a piece of real estate, right? Every Jew knows that if you want to be a Jew, you have to have a little piece of real estate. You have to have. There's nothing to talk about. It could be 4 inches by 4 inches, and you could carry it in your pocket. But you are an owner of some real estate. This has been a Jewish business. Real estate has been a Jewish business. And as human beings, we tend to protect ourselves. How? With walls and roofs and all of this. And this is protecting our space. Okay? And the more things that we gather, the more space we have, and the stronger we are, and the more protected we are, and we think the more successful we are. So the more things you have, the more successful you are. And that's the way the world works. People think, you know what, the more I have, and the more I have, and the more I have, that's going to show at the end of the day, when they say goodbye to you after 120 years, he with the most toys wins, right? That's kind of a sarcastic way of looking at it, but that's been the driving force in humanity since time began. Space is crucial. Comes along Judaism and says, my friends, you know what? People worry about the loss of money, but they never worry about the loss of time. Okay? If you lose $1, you go crazy. Where'd I put that $20 bill? You can go nuts. But the hour you spent on looking for that $20 bill, you could make $100 if you did something. But you don't worry about the time that's lost. So there is a famous book called The Sabbath, written by Abraham Joshua Heschel, which is dedicated to the idea that time is sacred. In Judaism, time is sacred. And he starts off by giving us a very interesting point, meaning that when God created the world, you look through the entire creation story, from the heavens and the earth, through everything, through the water, through the separation, to the forming of the globe, to the animals, to the plants and trees and everything. Not once does it use the word Kodesh. And what is the word Kodesh? Holy. Not once does it use it, except one time. The first time, when he creates Sabbath. When he creates Sabbath, what does he call Shabbos? Shabbos Kodesh. Sabbath holy. So Abraham Joshua Heschel, isn't it interesting? Think about this. He creates everything else. Everything. Heaven and earth, the majesty of the stars. I mean, if you ever like in the, in the mountains, or you're somewhere where there's not that much smog, and you lay down on your back, and you just look up at the heavens, at the stars. What do you see? Majesty. I mean, it's incredible what's going on up there. The thousands and thousands and millions of things. Does he use the word holy there? No. Does he use the word holy when he creates the trees? Think about it. You ever been to Sequoia? You see those trees in Sequoia? I mean, used majestic. I mean, the other trees that give fruit. Does he use the word holy for that? No. Stalks of grain, fields of glory. Does he use the word holy? No. Animals. Have you ever been to a safari? I mean, on a safari. I mean, I've been to a zoo. Okay, that's the closest I've been. You look at a lion, and the lion looks at you and he says, you're so lucky that I'm down here and you're up there, separated by a little wall that I can't climb. Because if you just come down here, we'll see who's smiling at the end and who's taking whose picture. Okay? All right? Or you look at the elephants or these other majestic animals, that God had created. Incredible. Does he use the word holy for them? No. And then, and last and not least, human beings, where God himself forms man, enlivens him, brings him into the world, creates Eve. Does he use the word holy there? No. But where does he use the word holy? Time. Time. Only in the Sabbath. Now later on, he will call the Jewish people Gai Kadosh. He will use the word holy for other things, a holy place. The Mishkan becomes holy. But that's after, first and foremost, talking about time as being holy. And Abraham Joshua Heschel then emphasizes this is why he puts in the laws of the Sabbath here. Why does he put the laws of the Sabbath here? Because you would think that look how important this thing is. This is now building a sanctuary for whom? For ourselves? No, it's a sanctuary for the Almighty. This is a symbol that, number one, God has forgiven us. So that itself is good reason for rushing the job. Number two, it's a place of communion. Where are we going to commune now with God? There. So you're going to bring a sacrifice on the holidays, you're going to bring it at the tabernacle. You're going to commit a sin, you have to bring a sacrifice to the tabernacle. You want to give you won the lottery, the $1.2 billion. You saw some lady won $1.2 billion. Anybody here? No. Wasn't anybody here? Okay, few. Okay. Where are you going to bring the sacrifice to? The tabernacle. It becomes the focal point, the most important part of Judaism. Now we're going to focus all of our energies into the tabernacle. You would think that what shall we do? The quicker the better, right? The quicker the better. So it took months to build it, but what? We had to take off every seventh day. You would think, why? Why? Well, you know what? We'll go back to Shabbos, but as long as we're involved in this kind of an endeavor, we should go straight. Don't stop any work until it's finished. Because we know in Judaism that action is much greater than just sitting around. Right? A person sitting around is doing what? Nothing. But if a person's doing some action, a good deed, helping somebody out, doing a mitzvah, learning Torah, do all of these things, it's much better than just sitting, with your arms folded like this, and not accomplishing anything. So you would think that the same idea would apply to the building of the sanctuary, that we want to go out there and we want to get this done as quickly as we can. And the Sabbath, which is extremely important, very, very important, but for right now, we will suspend it, for a few months, and then we'll go back to the Sabbath. Comes along the Torah, and the Torah says, no, my friend, I want you to always remember something very important, that time is sacred. Space will also be, don't get me wrong, the tabernacle will be very holy, and only the priesthood will be able to go in, and only Aaron will go into the Holy of Holies. Yes, that is true. But I want you to focus on what is important. I never want you to lose the idea that time, ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest thief in the world. There's no bigger thief than time in the world. You know why? Because every big thief, at least you can get something back from them. If you shake them upside down, you'll get a few kopecks, out of them. Something to do. But a second, a minute, an hour, if you lose it, you can cry for today to tomorrow, and no one has ever been able to retrieve 1 minute of time. Not 1 minute of time is this. So time, the idea of time within Judaism is so incredibly important that even after giving the Jewish people the idea of building the tabernacle and making a home for God, this is God, v'shachanti b'tochem, I will dwell in them, I will dwell in this sanctuary, even then it doesn't supersede the importance of time. Shabbos will always be important, and that's Moses wanted to reiterate that, because it's easy to lose focus. It's easy to lose focus. You get so involved in a project that you take everything else and push it away because you're so involved and so excited about doing things. Moses says, take it easy, relax. I want you to make sure that you still, even with all of this, keep your priorities correct. That time in this idea is very, very sacred, and we got to use it out. So when Hashem says from Friday night to Saturday night, no work, I want you to follow that rule. And so, just to make sure, don't kindle any fires, during the holiday of Shabbos, and you have to have complete rest. Now, rest itself was a creation, because God had worked very hard the first 6 days in creating everything. So on the seventh day, He created rest, and that rest. Now, what do we do on the Sabbath? So instead of not doing anything and just putting our hands like this, because we're free from our work, You're supposed to use that day for rejuvenation. Rejuvenation. Right? Okay, you got that right? Rejuvenation. Okay. J-E-W. That's how you spell rejuvenation. J-E-W. Okay? And how does a Jew rejuvenate on the Shabbos? By studying, by eating well, by filling the day with positive things, which you're allowed to do. Like, time with the family, like a Friday evening, Shabbos dinner, a Saturday afternoon, going to Shul to be with services with the community, studying a little extra because you have this extra time, you're not busy running around at work. So the Sabbath day is not only a time of just, folding your arms and not doing anything. Okay, so I put away my phone and I closed off my computer and I shut the lights. Now I'm going to be sitting like this all day. No, that's not the purpose of Shabbos. The purpose of Shabbos was to alleviate you of all of the work. So let's say, you're an architect, so you don't have to worry about the building and the plans in the city and all of that stuff. Don't worry about that on Shabbos. But what you should be worried about is how to better myself. I want to now capture the spiritual power of the holiday of Shabbos. Because what did God do when He said Kodesh? When God said Kodesh, He made that day holy. What did He do? He took that time frame and said there's some spiritual energy that falls into that Shabbos that you don't have for the rest of the 6 days. And and if you look at the Zohar, you look at Kabbalah will explain that from Shabbos, the rest of the week is blessed. So the way we conduct ourselves on the Sabbath, we gather in, we try to integrate all this tremendous spiritual energy. So when Saturday night comes and we make the Havdalah, and then we're back to business, you flick on the switch, and then you're back on your first thing, you check the phone. Like, for what? What happened? That you have to check the phone, but you got to check your phone, you got to check the computers, and then Saturday night, whatever it is, and Sunday morning, you're back into the grind. Know that if you use the prior 24 hours, to gather up this energy, boom, the rest of the week will go smooth and will go great. My name is Baruch and Kula Yom. So from Shabbos, so if you look in Kabbalah, and even in Shabbos itself, there are different levels. There's the beginning of Shabbos, which is Friday night, and then there's the day of Shabbos. But as we get closer to sundown on Shabbos, the spirituality grows and grows and grows. So the actual highest level of Shabbos is just before Shabbos ends. It's called the Mincha time, Raivin de Raivin. In Kabbalah it's called. That's when the greatest spiritual energy really is focused here. And that's the time when Hasidim used to have this custom of getting together during that period, an hour before Sabbath ends, singing some Hasidic songs, teaching a Hasidic discourse. Why? Because they wanted to capture those sparks that are flowing through the atmosphere on Shabbos in order to take it and to carry with them for the rest of the week. So Shabbos is an incredible, as a great philosopher once said, more than the Jews did for Shabbos, Shabbos did for the Jews. And again, it's unfortunate that here in America we don't really appreciate this. Like this incredible opportunity that we can have. I mean, just simply, we've talked about this before. All week, who knows? We eat together, we don't eat together. Everybody's on a different schedule. We're rushing, we're doing. Even when we're eating, we're not even really concentrating on the eating because our minds are somewhere else. But on Shabbos we have time we have. And that time is sacred. So what should we be doing on a Friday night? We should be sitting with our family and some friends, talking about positive things, no politics. I mean, that's the worst. You come Friday night and you start talking politics, it's worse than anything. Forget about it. No, forget about it. What you should be talking about is, things that bring us together, not that divide us. But we don't take advantage of it, and that's a sad part. That's the sad part of here. So in Vayakel, so you'll know that the reason why Moses opens up with the commandment with keeping the Sabbath holy is to make sure that you understand fully that our values don't change. Even when we're excited, about a project, remember that the day of Sabbath is very holy, and no light should be kindled on the Shabbos day, which of course, I have to mention, gave rise to us for a delicious dish that we call cholent. Okay, at least in the Ashkenazi world. Yes. I know that they have it also in the Sephardic world called chamim. It's a hot dish. But how do we get there? So I'll tell you how. Because it says over here, verse number 3 says, you shall not kindle fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Okay, so how do you understand that? How do we understand that? So if you took the class on Talmud, we know that there is a number of ways how the rabbis have interpreted certain verses. They've been given the right to interpret certain verses according to the oral tradition that Moses gave to the Jewish people. Okay. During the Second Temple era, there was a schism within Judaism between two major forces. One were called the Pharisees, it's us, okay, that's where the remnants of the Pharisees. The others were called the Sadducees, the Tzaddukim. The Tzaddukim were those people that did not believe in the validity of the oral tradition. They didn't believe that the rabbis were given this right. They didn't believe that the rabbis have a right to interpret it. They believed that just whatever it says in Scripture, whatever it says in the Torah, that's the way we are going to follow Judaism. The rabbis' interpretations is just something they made up in order to gather power. Because, like now that the rabbis have all the power, you're going to need a rabbi. So you need a rabbi, and so they rejected all of that. Okay, it's not so easy to live a biblical life without interpretation, right? At least with the rabbis, they'll give you some context. So they claimed, they claimed that the verse number 3, where it says, you shall not kindle any light on the Sabbath, is literal, meaning that there's no fire in your house on the Sabbath day. That's it. End of discussion. So comes Friday night, boom, there's no light. So how are you going to eat? And you'll wander around. And there's a Sabbath morning, thank God the sun comes up. Okay, fine. But there's no light, no kindling of light in your house on the Sabbath day. Meaning that if we still have some Sadducees here in Long Beach, they don't use any electricity on the Sabbath, meaning all these lights are off and everything, because you don't want, God forbid, to have kindle any light. Came along the rabbis, and the rabbis said, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. It means that you are prohibited from initiating a fire on the Sabbath. Meaning, you can't go and make a fire on the Sabbath. But if you make a fire before Sabbath, what's wrong with that? That could burn. So let's say, we're living in Poland. What happened? Poland is is very cold in the winter. And imagine not having any kindling on the Sabbath day. You know what you're doing? You're freezing. Okay? So the rabbis said, no problem. You put the wood in, enough wood for, let's say, a 24-hour fire, whatever. You light the wood on Friday afternoon, and gesundheit. That's no problem whatsoever. As long as you do it beforehand, and there's rules and regulations how you have to cover the oven, and make sure that you don't add to it, because the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to add to it. That you can't do. You can't add to the fire, but whatever's burning beforehand. So I'm assuming that what happened, just to show the Sadducees that they were wrong, we put up a samovar. We put hot water. So you fill up a hot water kettle before Shabbos. You let it burn on Shabbos. And while the Sadducee is drinking, iced tea, I'm enjoying a cup of Joe. Shabbos morning, a hot cup of coffee, and I walk by my Sadducee neighbor. There, l'chaim, and I'm drinking a hot cup of coffee while he's sitting there cursing himself because he's drinking something cold. Okay, and you can't have any tea after the meal, okay, because you're a Sadducee. So from that,
you should share it.
No, he doesn't want it. I asked him if he wants it. No, I can't have anything hot. Kindling on Shabbos. Okay, I would share it with him. There's no question. But as time went on, and I can't tell you exactly which particular year it happened, but someone decided if you can have hot water, why can't we have something else? So you're going to put a potato in there. We'll have a hot potato. And then someone said, well, if you're going to put a potato, you might as well put some meat. And if you can put meat, you can put some spices. And if you can have spices, you put some beans. If you have beans, you can put some other stuff in there. Next thing you know, what do you have? A cholent. Right? Then you have a cholent. So we want to thank the Sadducees. If they hadn't been so stuck up on, on this loy savaru eish, like not allowing fire, we probably would have to eat cold cuts on Shabbos. which we do anyways, by the way. But you could still have cholent. You could still have cholent. So that's where this verse is, that we interpret it, that any fire that's made, but it's very complicated. I'm making light of it, but it's complicated how you have to do this, because if you're going to cook on Friday, you have to make sure that it gets cooked a little bit before Shabbos. You can't start cooking like a minute before Shabbos. That you can't do. You have to have at least some part of the dish cooked before Shabbos. And then you have to make sure that you have to cover it, because again, the rabbis were extremely afraid that if you're going to allow this, then people are going to forget, and you're going to start putting stuff on the oven and in the oven, and and you mix the cholent while Chani told me to put it at 250, and I put it at 450. You know what happens if you put cholent at 450 overnight? You know what you get? So now I'm in deep trouble. So I wake up in the middle of the night and I start praying to the cholent. Go back to 250, go back to 250, go back to 250. Now it won't go back to 250. Okay? The only way it goes back to 250 is, you know how? You turn it, but you can't turn it on Shabbos. Okay, you can't turn it on Shabbos. So the rabbis may say, don't do that. You have to make sure that everything is set aside. And the opposite is true. Like you come there, you peek into the trunk, you see, it could take a good, you have to stir it, because the bottom is getting cooked, but the top looks a little raw. No, you can't do that. Okay, because then you're actually cooking on Shabbos. So the rules of cooking on Shabbos and warming up food on Shabbos are very complicated. There's a whole chapter in the tractate of Shabbos which deals with this. Exactly, of what you can do, what you can't do, and now, especially now, with these newfangled ovens that have a Shabbos mode on them, and then there's warmers and all of these things. You got to be careful what you could do, what you can't do, how you do it, when you do it, all of these things. But bottom line is, you can have cholent on Shabbos. That's the key. That's the bottom line, and that's what's written over here. Why Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the laws of Sabbath before he gave us the laws of building the sanctuary. Then he says, this is what I want you to do. And it was incredible, the response. The response was so overwhelmingly positive to this. That people were just taking their jewelry off of them, and just everybody who had anything. And maybe a handful of times this probably happened in the history of fundraising, is they said, we have too much. Stop, we have too much. He didn't think about maintenance. I'm not sure if he had a maintenance fund, but the builders told him, Moshe Rabbeinu, you got to call off the campaign, because people were so generous with coming forth with all of this stuff that they needed. They said, die, it's enough, thank you very much, and it's incredible, and have a wonderful day, and just thank you very, 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 very much. So that campaign went swimmingly well. People realized that, they had made a mistake with the golden calf, and then now they renewed their relationship with the Almighty through being generous towards this. Bezalel goes ahead and he builds the sanctuary, even though Moses had commanded him to first make the ark, because that's the first thing that he heard. When God first approaches him, the first commandment is make an ark. So he goes to Bezalel and he tells Bezalel, I want you to make an ark. Bezalel got all of the details, but built first the sanctuary. When Moses saw the sanctuary being built, he said to Mahai, what's this? Didn't I tell you to make the ark first? He says, that's not the way you build it. I mean, every contractor, every architect worth 2 cents will tell you, you don't put the furniture set before you build the bedroom. I mean, first you got to have a bedroom, and then yes. So I can't build the ark first. And Moses agreed with him. He said, "You know what? Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why you're in charge. That's why you're the architect. You know what? That you're in charge. Of it." And that pretty much leads us to the rest of the section. Is just a reiteration of what we had before. And commentators ask why, how come this over and over again? To show you the importance of details. Number one, that this is exactly what God wanted it to do, and that's why we're going to reiterate the whole thing: how much, and where, and what, and how tall, and how wide, and how long, etc., etc. Okay, so that's basically the portion of the week called Vayakel. On the Sabbath is when we're going to read this, is also called Shabbos Para, the Shabbos of the red heifer. Okay, Now, I'd like to just a few minutes just to talk about this, and then we'll get into the questions. There are 4 times in the year that we have what we call special readings around this time of year. Between the first day of Adar and Pesach, which is about a 6-week period, we have 4 weeks that we have special readings. We already went through the first 2 readings, meaning that we went through the reading of Shkolim. A couple of weeks ago, we read the section about the half shekel, and I explained then, but why do we do the half shekel? Because that was the time that they bought all the communal sacrifices. That's when this was a poll tax, and every year they went around during this period saying, "Come on, pay up." This was the April 15th of the half shekel tax. Okay, that was number 1. Then the Shabbos before Purim, last Shabbos, we read Zohar. We read the section about Amalek, because Amalek happens to be Haman's. There you go. Okay, the Haman's grandfather. So we read about him, and then we have 2 more portions that we're going to read. This portion is going to be Parshas Parah, the section about the red heifer. Now you're going to say, Rabbi, red heifer? What's a red heifer? So I know we haven't seen much of a red heifer. I mean, maybe Dennis in his years as a vanilla, never seen a red heifer in all the years. Okay, I don't want to. If you see a red heifer, you're probably on drugs. Okay, you're having a bad reaction to something you've taken. Okay, because they generally don't come around. A red heifer has to be completely red, even if it has 2 black hairs. That nullifies it. It disqualifies it from being a red heifer. It's got to be all black, all red. Okay. Why are we reading this? And what is the story of the red heifer? So Hashem tells Moses like this. I know this is going to be hard for you to understand, my friend, but this is what I want you to listen. Okay? When a Jew comes into contact with a corpse, okay, whether in a war, whatever the circumstances are, and he touches a corpse or comes into contact with a corpse, comes into the room with a corpse, comes into a building with a corpse, he is rendered impure, tamei. Only a corpse. This has nothing to do with an animal carcass or other things that render. This is specifically about someone coming to contact with a corpse. Okay, we're alive. That's dead. There's a separation between life and death. You're impure. So what? So if I'm impure, so nothing's changed. I'm still the same person, except for one thing. I can't come to the temple because I'm impure. You have to be pure to come to the temple. So all year round, it really doesn't make a difference, except if you're a Kohen. If you're a Kohen, you have to be in a state of purity because you have to go to work. And number 2, you have to eat like the gifts, the truma and these things where you have to be in a state of purity. But if you're not a Kohen and you're impure the rest of the year, okay, we're all in the state of that now. I mean, so how do I purify myself? This is what I want you to do. Now I'm going to explain to you how a Jew purifies himself. So he goes out there, you're going to find yourself a red heifer. Okay? You're going to find a red heifer. Okay? You're going to take that red heifer, you're going to slaughter it, you're going to burn it. You're going to take the ashes. You'll take a bunch of other stuff, hyssop, this and that. You'll put it in the red heifer, and you'll dump it in the water and sprinkle it on the guy on the 3rd and 7th day of his purification process. Goes to the mikveh, you're pure. Moses goes, you got to be kidding me. Right? You're putting me on, God. You're putting me on. Come on. God says, no, I'm serious. I am godly serious. I am godly serious that this is what I want you to do. Moses goes, hey, if this is your will, thy will be done. And that's what it is. So he tells the Jews before we bring a sacrifice. Now, what is the important sacrifice that every Jew has to bring? If you don't bring a peace offering, you don't. And if you never sin, you don't. But the one sacrifice that you must bring is the korban Pesach. The Pesach sacrifice. Everybody has to. That is a mitzvah from the Torah. And you have to come to the temple to do it. You have to come inside the temple. Okay, so what do you do? So now you have to purify yourself. You got to go through this process of the red heifer purification. So Moses does that, and they bring the sacrifices in the desert, and at least in the first year. Okay? So now you'll understand why we're reading it now. Because what's coming up around the corner? Pesach. Pesach is coming up around the corner. Now, if God forbids one of us came into contact with a corpse, we have to go through this purification thing, and therefore now is Pesach, we are reminding ourselves now. Of course, we're only reading this as a remembrance. No one's going to find a red heifer. Even if we did find a red heifer today, it won't help us. Maimonides writes that there were 9 red heifers brought from the time of Moses till the destruction of the second temple. Think about that. That's a long time. Okay, going into Israel, waiting a few hundred years till you build, the few hundred years of the existence, and another few hundred years. So it's a long time, 1,500 years. They brought 9 red heifers. 9. The 10th is being saved. For when? Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, there'll be a 10th red heifer. So if you see a red heifer, well, let's say you're driving in, I don't know, Montana, and you see a red heifer, stop, pay for it, you'll get paid back. By the rabbis in Israel, they'll pay you back for the red heifer. Bring it immediately to Yerushalayim. I don't know how you can get it on United Airlines, but somehow dress it up. That's it. You put a beard on it, and you get it. The TSA clearance. You bring the red heifer on the plane, and then Mashiach is going to come. You'll be the hero. Okay? There was a man he wasn't not a Jewish man, but he lived in Israel. And just to tell you a little story of Kibbud Av Aim, the importance of honoring your father and your mother. So, on the breastplate that the Kohen wore, there were 12 precious stones. It's also included in the portion. Anyways, one was lost. So they had to find a replacement. Let's just say it was a diamond. I don't know which one exactly, but let's say it was a diamond. So they went looking all over Israel, and this guy Dama, he had the diamond. So they came to him, the rabbis, and the head of the Sanhedrin. They said, "How much you want?" They came up with a price, and they said, "Okay, we're ready to pay." He said, "I'm ready to make the deal, but I can't give it to you now." They said, "Well, no, we need it right now." He said, "Well, I'm sorry, because it's locked up in a chest, and the key is under my father's pillow. So go get the key." "Sorry, my father is sleeping." "So wake him up." No. He wouldn't wake up his father, and he wouldn't give them a time. As long as my father's sleeping, I'm not waking him. So the rabbis left. They found it somewhere else. What happened to him? Next year, he had a flock, and guess what was born to him? A red heifer. Now they came back to him, and this is what we call a mensch. So now they come back to him, and they say, "Dama, how much do you want for the red heifer?" Now he could have asked, everybody needs the red heifer. He said, whatever we decided on the diamond, pay that, and that would be done. But then he didn't need his father's permission, because his father wasn't sleeping on the red heifer. That would have been a problem. That he said, "My father's asleep on the red heifer, I'm not selling it." But that's just, the story is told to us because it wants to show, number one, what a mensch is, and number two, the respect someone has for their parents. But that's why we read on this Shabbos, we're reading this section about the red heifer to remind us and remember, that years ago we had this kind of a process that people would go there and they would purify themselves, and people would be able to celebrate Pesach. I'm hoping and praying that this year, maybe Mashiach is going to come, and if he does come, we'll all go through the process, or however that's going to work. I'm going to leave that up to Mashiach himself, and that we'll all be able to, go to Yerushalayim and spend Pesach in Yerushalayim together as a community. At this time, we got 10 minutes to go. And it's amazing. 3 people need to go to the bathroom. Is that what the raising of the hand is? Okay. Marcy. We'll go ladies first, okay? Ladies first.
Actually, you hit on several of my questions. You hit on several topics that were my questions. So I'll start with one.
Okay.
So regarding Moshiach, so it's only one red heifer that will come?
I'm assuming.
Not 5.
There won't be 5. We're only going to know, as Maimonides writes, we're only going to really know what happens when Mashiach comes. But we're assuming that it will take one red heifer. There'll be a lot of ashes, and we'll be able to take care of it with one red heifer. As far as I know.
Purification and then breastplate.
Okay.
Actually, I have a few more, but I'll wait.
You'll wait.
So for purification, I understand the laws of Nidah for women.
Correct.
And the significance of blanking.
Going to the mikveh.
The mikveh. Is it required of religious
Biblical,
men
yes.
to go
Biblically.
to the mikveh before Shabbos?
Biblically, there was absolutely, just like the women were going through their purification on a monthly basis to the mikveh. If a man became impure, of course he doesn't go through a menstruation, but if he became impure through, intimacy, for example, or whatever it is, he got sick, he got garnered, whatever, a disease or thing, he had to go to the mikveh. So biblically, a man had to go to the mikveh for purification purposes, just like a woman. Today, not so. Because today because we're in a state of impurity anyways. Now comes along Kabbalah and said, "Oh, you don't understand what the power of a mikveh is. A mikveh is, but there's no biblical not prohibition, but the opposite of a prohibition is requirement. There's no biblical requirement, but the power of a mikveh is very powerful. So many Hasidic men and others, Svardim, go to the mikveh before Shabbos. There's many that go to the mikveh every day, before services in the morning. So they go every day to the mikveh because this is a kind of a spiritual place to cleanse yourself. But it's not biblical requirement like the nida, for example, like the menstruate, like the woman.
So my Moroccan father-in-law, he should rest in peace,
Yeah.
he went before every Shabbos.
Yes.
Is there a difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim?
There's difference between everybody. There's difference between everybody. There's different Sephardim in Sephardim. And there's difference in Ashkenazim and Ashkenazim. So every group has its own little customs. Some only go before Yom Kippur, some go before the holidays, some go before Shabbos, some go on Friday and Shabbos. Some go every day. But that's it. Go to your next question, the last one,
This is
and
going to
then.
be more intense, so let's have it.
Okay, go ahead, Craig. No, go ahead, Craig. Go ahead.
She actually asked my question. So
Which one was that?
See, great minds think alike.
There you go. So did she answer your question? Okay, John.
Yeah,
And then
there's a town called Shiloh,
yes.
and I've heard that they're supposed to have 3 or 4 red heifers.
Actually, five.
That's what I heard.
Rabbi Google here says 5.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen it. I'm not sure if if the Sanhedrin would get together, 71 rabbis travel there, inspect that, and that would fall into the. I'm sure they're red. I don't doubt that they're red, but if they would fall into the category of being the red heifer that we need with all of its qualifications that has to happen, I don't know. But you know what? We'll only find out when Mashiach comes. So that may be a good reason for Mashiach to show up today, to go to Shiloh and find out whether those red heifers fit the bill.
It says they found them in Texas, so
They found them in. Then for sure they're good. Then if they found them in Texas, they're definitely 100% kosher red heifers. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Come on.
And they taste like chicken.
And they. Now imagine if you had a red heifer and then you shecht it and had a steak. I mean, you can imagine you just gave up a $2 million steak. You had the red heifer, the one Mashiach is waiting, and you're saying, uh-oh. All of a sudden, I mean, I hope that steak tastes good. Okay, I hope that steak tastes good.
I'm wondering why God does not speak to man today, but in the past, all these instructions.
There's always one in the class. No. What? It's not you. It's not you. That is an excellent question. That's an excellent question. All the questions are great, but this is a question that's been talked about for many times. We have basically a tradition, a Kabbalah, not the study of Kabbalah, but Kabbalah as a tradition, that prophecy, which is the means of communication where God spoke directly to person. I wouldn't say to man, because there were women prophets as well. There was Ruth, and there was Miriam and Hannah, and there's a number of different prophetesses. So that ended with the first temple period, meaning that once the first temple was destroyed, the whole idea of God revealing Himself to a human being and giving him a message to bring to the people had ended. That was done with Haggai and Zechariah and the last of the prophets. It was done. the Jews were exiled for 70 years, and they came back with Ezra. That was the last of the vestige of the prophecy era, where there was Ezra and Zerubbabel and Mordechai and others, that were there, but that generation passed away, and prophecy ended with them. Why God chose to do that? Well, it's probably because our level of spirituality, like at the time of the Bible, people were maybe more in tune to spirituality. So you needed people like Moses and Aaron and other Joshua prophets that God talked to. Once the Second Commonwealth started, the Second Temple era, people were not as in tune to that spiritual world, so you didn't have that kind of prophecy, but you had more of where leaders, you had great leaders, Judah HaMaccabee, his brothers, other great leaders came, but this idea of God speaking to them, that ended. Just like miracles. Now that doesn't mean that miracles don't happen today. I believe that miracles do happen today to individuals, but it's not like in the time of the Bible where, like you could have an Elijah come and in front of everybody pulls off this incredible stunt that even David Copperfield in Vegas could not pull off. No way. But that's basically the Kabbalah that we have, is that prophecy ended after the First Temple era, and anyone that comes back and says that they're a prophet is false. Now, in the Talmud it says that, as we get closer to Mashiach, maybe there's going to be who knows what, but for all intents and purposes, prophecy has ended in the sense of biblical prophecy. The Navi, that God says that I will communicate with him. Now there are great rabbis and great scholars and great people that have a very, very refined spiritual, composition to them. And they have what's called Ruach HaKodesh. They have what's called like a heavenly spirit that rests on them. They're not prophets in the sense, but they have this very, very intense spiritual nature to them. Certainly Hasidim believe that. We believe, like, for example, the Baal Shem